Hello everyone, welcome to Dash of Finance. In this video, we'll be covering how to calculate one's true worth as an employee. And so this will be a little of a philosophical exercise, but you'll find it interesting and thought-provoking, I'm pretty sure. So if you like content like this, make sure to subscribe and then also join our Discord by going to the description of this video. So the very first thing that I like to do is define what capitalism is. And so the most relevant definition, because there can be multiple ways of defining it, but the most relevant one that I found is that capitalism is an economic system based on the private ownership of the means of production and their operation for profit. So the key words there are two terms, which is private ownership and means of production. And so when it comes to private ownership, that refers to the owners, that refers to the shareholders of a company or organization, whatnot. And then when it comes to means of production, the way how that's relevant is that within economic terms, that also includes the human labor that goes into it. When you study economics, you'll hear three, but it's really four main factors of production. Those being entrepreneurship, which is the capitalist, which is the private ownership, capital, which is like machinery and whatnot, land, that could be physical land or digital land, and then also labor, which is the employees. So with that being said, when we go back to our definition of what capitalism is, it's a system in which it is designed for the entrepreneur, the owner. So what you'll see on this picture, the highlighted, to control the other three. So it's not to say that in a conspiracy type way or whatnot, but understand that it's in its best interest to lower all costs so that they're able to make profit. So what you'll see here is that naturally there's a dichotomy between what an employee needs for survival, most often, in terms of employeehood, versus the owner's desire to accumulate profit. So there's a tug and pull between that relationship. They're commingled, but they're opposing, if you understand. So why is that relevant? So since we understand that they're opposing, let me give you this scenario here. If I offered you $1 million, but you had to die to accept it, would you take it? Would you take that deal? If I bumped it up to 100 million or 2 billion, 50 billion, the reality is that for most people on the planet, the answer is no amount of money would they ever die for in terms of how much they want to accept it. So with that being said, if we were to make a monetary figure based on that scenario, we would say that life has an infinite price tag on it. So it's more than $1 million, more than $1 billion. It's infinite in terms of the natural intrinsic value to each and every single individual. So maybe not a person across the street or across the world, but for you in your own life, most likely you'll value it at infinite scale. So if we have this on the graph, we have to juxtapose this with the reality that a lot of people measure their worth, so their financial worth, by the incomes that they make. And because a majority of people are employees on a global scale instead of entrepreneurs and owners of capital, let's say, because that's the case, you understand that within the paradigm of capitalism, it's in the best interest for the owner, so the owner of the business, who controls the price of the position. The employee doesn't get to say, "Oh, I want this much, that much." No, it's just whatever the capitalist says. So because the capitalist is incentivized to keep that as low as possible, why is that a metric in which people use that's meant to be authentic, if you understand? There should be some discount. Because if you understand that for you to work there, they're going to have to hire you for less than what the monetary value of what you produce for them to be able to make a profit. So if that's the case, then you should understand that a $50,000 salary might actually be $75,000. So it's just you're not getting that. So just keep that in mind. So the argument here in terms of the main part of the video, or the title of the video, how to calculate one's true worth as an employee, I took this realization and I basically extrapolated it to fit what an ideal ideal life would be for someone who's an employee. So let me break that down. Basically, if we have someone who makes $35,000 a year, right? And say they work in the U.S., full time is 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. So that's 40 hours a week. And for 52 weeks out of the year, you get 2,080 hours. So if someone's working that hard and making $35,000, and let's say we have a sample size of 100 of them, if I asked them whether or not they would accept $35,000 to quit their job, no strings attached, but they could do whatever hobby they would want, out of 100 people, how many people would quit their job? And so, even though there's no exact metric on this, I can say realistically about 60 to 70% bare minimum of people would leave if there's absolutely no strings attached, if they knew that the money was going to come in forever or for however long the deal is situated. I'm sure at least out of 60 to 70 out of 100 people would take that deal. So with that being said, here comes another secondary philosophical question. From the perspective of the employee, does the employee value their work time more because they earn money, or do they enjoy their leisure time more because they get to enjoy their time doing their hobbies? And so what you understand is that how we currently have it is, for most employees, they are required to they're required to put in 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week plus sometimes to be able to make ends meet. But when it comes to it on an intrinsic level, so when non-monetary metrics are used, you'll see that they actually enjoy their leisure time more, whether it be going to the boxing gym, spending time with their kids, reading, movies, dating, whatever it is. They tend to have more intrinsic enjoyment of that. So what I try to guess, essentially, is that instead of thinking about it where they have to give up their time in exchange for money, so we had the example of $35,000 for our imaginary worker. When you break that down over full time, I believe that breaks up to about $16.83. $16.83 per hour. So we're going to say that's $17 an hour. So if we understand that in a job, so I'm making $17 an hour, if no strings attached, they were offered a raise, they would take as high of a raise as possible, assuming that they had to do the exact same work. Nothing changes, because it's in their best interest to do that. So we can kind of think of $17 as a glass ceiling, in a sense. Whereas we understand in the hobbies, in terms of the monetary side of hobbies, people enjoy them, and people want the highest quality of, let's say, boxing equipment, or skateboard or going to the best, travel vacations, whatever, their activity is for leisure. They want the best quality of that, but on a monetary sense, it has to be less than 100% of their income that comes that comes in from their job. It has to be, because they have to spend they still have to spend some money on rent, on bills, on food, groceries, whatever. So if we understand that current expenditure in terms of leisure is less than less than 100%, meaning meaning if they could ball out as much as they could, what is the upper limit, essentially? So since we're assuming that the current leisure enjoyments is at a discount to that 100%, but at the same time, the person getting paid $17 an hour would always take more to work, so meaning giving up their leisure time that they enjoy more. You have to assume that the leisure time, if someone we're giving a proper budget in terms of how do we pay for you to enjoy your hobby for as long as possible, or for at the most satisfactory rate. You would assume that monetary figure will be more than what they earn at the job. And so that's kind of the point that we make here. So if someone makes $35,000 a year, would they take $70,000 to enjoy more leisure? And the answer is yes. Would they take $100,000 to enjoy more leisure? Yes. And so because that's the case, you can assume that their economic value, if they had the means to financially support it and just do their hobbies, will be much higher and more valuable to society from an economic perspective than just via working. So what I decided to do here is make this comparison. So we're going to wrap this video up. Basically, I decided to take the observation that even though a worker officially works full-time 8 hours a day, realistically speaking, they are devoting pretty much 24 hours to the business that they work for. And how is that possible? So for example, when you work at a company and you get off of work, let's say in the afternoon, realistically speaking, you still have to take care of yourself in a manner that you'll be prepared for the following day. So meaning that you can't go, not saying that everyone would want to, but just in a hypothetical scenario, you can't party every single day because you know that you have to work in the morning. So work restricts your free time even though you're off the clock, essentially. Another example is, for example, when you're driving to work, driving to and from work. Most people don't get paid for that, or don't get reimbursed for gas money and whatnot. But realistically, that's not your leisure time either. So they're able to gain more hours in terms of the company is able to gain more hours from you than what you're essentially getting paid for. So if we understand that could be flexible in that manner in terms of true work hours instead of just the posted ones, we can understand for leisure as well that even though someone might just be chilling at home or doing something low tempo versus traveling the world versus skydiving versus shopping all the time, whatnot, we can understand that will be at a 24/7 level, meaning that can happen at any point in the day. They can take naps whenever, so that if we had a data set of how many times they transacted within an economy, you would see a much fuller spectrum of hours out of the 24-hour set versus when they're employees at their company. So if that's the case, that's 24/7, and our previous point also was that they would spend more than $17 an hour doing their leisures if they had infinite amount of funds to be able to subsidize that. When we combine those two, what I decided to do was that I used $17 an hour as a minimum value, and then I multiplied that by 168 hours. Let me just make sure that's right. Yeah. Let me just make sure. I don't want to mess that up. 1683 times 168 hours per week. Yep, there you go. Okay. So I multiplied it by 168 hours of the week, which is 24 hours times 7. And then after that, I multiplied it by 52 weeks in a year. And so when you get that down, you get a figure of $147,000 is what that person would be worth if they enjoyed all their time, all their natural time, instead of going to work, at least what they get paid for at their job. So this is an interesting little exercise here, because it shows you that there's a gap between how much more we could contribute to society. And so the bigger context behind this was that I questioned, how back in the day, earlier civilization times, people would all be farmers. Everyone would be a farmer, and the amount of harvest you got was pretty much what you needed. And so mirroring that to today, that's what pretty much most people do. They go to work and they quote unquote farm, they quote unquote harvest, and they get paid in a week, 2 weeks time, so they can enjoy the fruits of their labor, essentially. So the point is, when you study the development of societies, you notice that society advances, and drastically so, once there's means of more efficiently growing crops, more efficiently harvesting crops, distributing crops, etc. Meaning that not everyone has to be a farmer. Someone can be intellectual, architect, entertainer, any other occupation that's needed or desired within the society, instead of just being a farmer. So the idea is that if that did happen, factually speaking, that's how society advanced, is there a point in time where in modern times, not everyone has to work for their income? And not meaning that it gets subsidized by the government or through heavy taxation or whatnot, or through any welfare programs, but simply put, instead of big hedge funds enjoying or trying to invest into or you're spending billions and billions of dollars on risky investments or speculative investments and whatnot, could there ever be a situation where they could spend billions and billions or millions and millions, however, but not just them, but any business, any individual with a high net worth, essentially? Could there ever be a point in time where it's actually financially beneficial for them to offload the cost of someone in a lower financial caste than them? So let's give an example. If someone had a yearly expenditure of groceries, and for number's sake, let's just say it's $1,000. If someone has a spare $1 million, they have $1,000. So the point is, instead of necessarily having them individually help the entire $1,000 out, if they just took, let's say, $100 each for every person, then now instead of 1,000 thousands, they have 10,000 100s. This is a cut. So what I was trying to say in this section was that because an investor isn't required to cover the entire $1,000 bill for their groceries per customer, they could instead agree to only support each individual customer 10%. So meaning with their $1 million, at a maximum distribution of funds, they can help 10,000 people out with 10% of their annual bills. So for 10,000 people, their groceries got reduced, and they only have to pay 90% of what they used to. So what this also means is that if there were 10 people who had to spare $1 million to invest, that means that with only the support of 10 people, 10,000 people are able to now get groceries 100% free, if each and every single one of the investors agreed to 10% cap per individual. When you then extrapolate this, you understand that one wealthy person or one wealthy company can realistically subsidize the needs for either food, clothes, anything else for an entire population of 10,000, 100,000 plus people, which could be an entire city, multiple cities, multiple towns, depending on what the geographic is, whatever the geography is. So back to the original audio now. That's kind of the whole point where, if you guys have been following the channel, we've been talking about, or following the Discord, we've been talking about the crypto subsidy. So, and this is essentially what I'm getting at here, where in the same way how with the trivia questions for you guys, I gave it to you guys however long ago, and with time it appreciated. We're in a little recession here for our economy, but in due time it'll increase again. And because it's passive, and because it's in a fashion where you guys didn't have to necessarily work for it, and because more enjoyable, you guys have held on to it for a long time. When it's time to develop the shops and whatnot for the internal stores and whatnot, you guys will be able to spend your money if you like to, or just hold on to it. So my whole opinion is that if we could have a lot of people with the millions or tens of millions, hundreds of millions, realistically speaking, we can have a person who's able to afford their, in terms of the employee, we're going back to the initial topic, in terms of the employee, they'll be able to have more than that $35,000. So let's say we're able to subsidize their costs in a net form, let's say by 150%, 200%, via the corporate token, via the appreciation. Then realistically speaking, once they pay their bills, which I would assume would remain less than the increase in their income, hopefully, that they would have the rest of the money just be disposable. And so that would increase the amount of economic activity within local businesses. There'll be more investments, to say if they try to, invest in the markets or anything. There'll just be more money around, period. So the ending, I guess, point here is that, is it smart to have full employment like capitalism thinks, where the vast majority of people are working every single day? Or is it smarter to incentivize a system where a lot of people's lives can be subsidized for the fact that they can spend more money doing leisure and increase the economic value of local businesses and also bigger international businesses as well? So thank you guys for watching this episode of Dash of Finance. More videos to come. Thank you.